Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to discuss the Microsoft Xbox Series X game showcase that happened a couple days ago at the time this gets uploaded. So, like we did with the PS5 video, we're going to talk about my overall thoughts first, give a brief overview of exactly what happened. Then we'll talk about each game individually, what I thought of it, and then we will close off with some final thoughts. This shouldn't be as long as the PS5 video was, and it should hopefully fit into one video. I mean, you never know when you watch something that's on this channel, but we should hopefully be able to get under the whatever length of the PS5 video was in total. So, overall, this conference showcase was okay. it was not absolutely phenomenal. It was not breathtaking or fun or outstanding or anything. It wasn't mind blowing, but it wasn't like awful. It was not the worst thing I'd seen in my life, right? It was just perfectly average in my opinion. So definitely did not do as much for me as the PS5 conference did. But there were definitely some really good looking games in this conference. So the way they structured this was pretty standard when you hear a basic rundown. Like, started off, got a little bit of an introduction. There was a pre-show that apparently I missed. There were some games that were going over there. I can't remember which ones they were because I never actually saw it because they didn't. There was like the live stream went up, and it didn't say, "Hey, there's going to be a pre-show or anything." There was nothing alluding to that, so I missed that. So the actual conference starts with just a brief introduction, like, hi, welcome to the showcase, all that fun stuff. And we got the big Halo Infinite to start us off, the big gameplay section. And that was the most gameplay we saw. It was about 8 minutes, I think, roughly. And we'll talk more about it in a second. But then we got more game announcements. We got a brief break in the middle to talk about some things, mostly related to Game Pass. Then we got some more games. Then they were like, right, that's it. We're done. Bye. Oh, wait, no. There's one more thing to show. Showed that off, and then that was the end. But the way they showed some things was really like, I don't know how to describe, cheesy, I guess? Like, I don't know if it was just me. I don't know if I'm the only one that noticed this, but for every game that was new, like, I think there was like 2 games in the whole thing that didn't have this at the beginning. I think Halo Infinite and one other, because obviously Halo Infinite we already knew about, and we'd seen some trailer, I guess, at some point. And there was some other game that didn't have it, but before every game, it was like world premiere, and at first it was like, okay, get it, it's the world premiere for this game, but it was after every single game, and it was like Xbox console exclusive or console launch exclusive, and it's like, gee, you're really trying to prove that you've got exclusives this time. I mean, if you know anything about the Xbox One, you know that the exclusive lineup has been, barren. Like, there's been not a lot of exclusives on the Xbox One that are actually, worth playing. I'm sure there's plenty of shovelware on the Xbox store, but there wasn't a ton of big exclusives, and that's really felt when you had Sony and Nintendo really like just giving us game after game after game that's absolutely amazing, and then you've got Microsoft, and they're just like, hey, there's Halo, there's Gears of War, there's Forza. It's always Halo, Gears of War, and Forza. That's it. That's all there is. And then there was only really one new Halo game that was like, there was only one mainline Halo game, I should say, but Anyway, they really wanted to hammer in the fact that they have got exclusive lined up for this generation. And if every game here stays exclusive, then the Series X will be something that you'll want to pick up. Like, there are some games, at least for me, that definitely I would buy a Series X for. Mainly, like, one in particular that I really think looks absolutely amazing. But we'll get to that when we get to that. So overall, the conference was okay. If that's all you cared about, then it was all right. But now, let's get into some of the actual games that they showed off. Like we said, Halo Infinite started the conference off, and it looked fine graphically. The game itself looks really fun. Like, I couldn't discern much from the story because the gameplay didn't show focus really on story. I think it was trying to focus on like the world, the combat, and all that, but they couldn't really discern much of the story. Although we were introduced to the new armor for Master Chief, which I think looks pretty good. We got introduced to a side character who I can't remember if we got the name of, but they're in this rocket ship and they crash on this planet, and Master Chief is going around the world. It really looked like it was just set up to like showcase some of like the combat and vehicle play, but both looked great. The combat looked really good. Like that's one of the things in a Halo game that you've got to have is solid combat, and this really looked good. There was a great variety of weapons, and it all looked really smooth. It all looked really good. Let's be honest. If I'm being honest, even the vehicle play also looked pretty good. We didn't see as much of it, but we got to see the Warthog, which is like that, like army jeep kind of thing. If you don't know what that is, like, but we got to see a little bit of gameplay in that, and that all looks solid as well. We basically saw a lot of running and gunning, if we can be honest. But we got to this bit about halfway through, I want to say, maybe close to 3/4 of the way through, and it was going up this elevator. And I really thought that was going to be like the big Breath of the Wild moment. You know, like how Link comes through the cave and he just looks out into the open world and sees the scale of it. I thought that's what they were going to go for. I thought they were going to get to the top of this lift and it was just going to like pan out and show us this huge world. Because they went on after the interview after the gameplay, in an interview to say how much bigger this world is compared to Halo games of the past. But we didn't really get to see the real scale of that. Like, we did get to see a 3D map, which looked pretty interesting. Like, a full 3D map, and it looked pretty vertical from what I saw. But we never really got to see the scale of it, because they never really showed it. Like, they didn't focus on that. But now on to, like, the thing that's going around about this game. People aren't very happy about the graphic quality of the game. Like, people seem to be like, well, this doesn't look very next gen. And I was sitting there going like, yeah, you know what, everyone's right. But I wasn't too disappointed because I'm just sitting there like, this is an Xbox One game. It looked like an Xbox One game. And it's been built for the Xbox One. Like, this has been in development for a while. And it was definitely started on the Xbox One. I don't know if it was always intended to go to the Series X, but it was definitely started off as an Xbox One game. And it shows. Like, I don't know if there's going to be further enhancements made to the game as it goes on. I know there's going to be a patch for ray tracing, which is weird. Like, that's kind of a thing you should probably just have in to begin with. But the game really looks like it's been built to function on the original Xbox One. Like, this is the One S in front of us, but the original one, the big VCR-like model, it looks like it's being forced to run on that hardware, and it looks like it's suffering because of that. I feel like if this was just a Series X exclusive, it would look a lot better. But unfortunately, it wasn't. And another thing that came out after the fact was, this is meant to be like the big launch game. Like, it's coming out holiday 2020. And it's going to be 4K 60 frames per second. And they keep hammering this in, like, the Series X is so powerful. It's the world's most powerful console. But then, I mean, the gameplay was running on PC. Like, I think that is a thing that has happened before. But, I mean, not usually for a big launch game to sell your next-gen console. Especially when it's, like, the big thing. Like, this is, like, the big game that everybody knew was coming. This is what everybody was wanting to see, because this was going to be, like, the biggest gameplay section that we would see in this event. And people were wanting to see what the Series X could do. We never saw what the Series X could do. We saw what a PC could do. They said it's like, oh yeah, this represents what the Xbox Series X will be. But how do we know that? Like, for all we know, the game could look significantly better, significantly worse on a Series X. Like, if it was me, I would have run it on a Series X to prove that it's a Series X and that this is what Series X could do. But that was Halo Infinite. It's going to be able to run at 4K 60 frames per second, which is good. I think that should be the standard for this generation. Like, there'll be some games that will probably dip down to 30. And there's some games that will hit 120 frames per second, which we'll get to one of them in a minute. But I think the standard should be 4K 60 frames per second across the board. Like, if it's not immediate at launch, it should be the thing that developers focus on, because I feel that's like the sweet spot for balance of graphical quality and frame rate. Like 120 frames per second is nice, but I mean, most people don't have the infrastructure to use 120 frames modes in games. Like most TVs still don't support 120 frames per second. And if you have a monitor that supports 120 frames per second, you've most likely got a decent gaming PC to go with it. So it's like, but that's just me. But anyway, after Halo Infinite, which received some mixed reception, shall we say, we got a trailer for State of Decay 3. Now, I've never played any of the State of Decay games, but I heard that the second game, which came out, started off horrible, like just a glitchy, buggy mess, and it's gotten better as things have gone on, which is good. But we didn't see any gameplay at all for this game. It was just a cinematic trailer. Looks decent. It's obviously survival horror genre, but zombie survival. But we didn't see much, so I've not really got a lot to say because they didn't really show us much. So after that, we got Forza Motorsport. Not Forza Motorsport 8 or anything. It's just, I think Microsoft have just given up with numbers. Like, you know, Halo Infinite is probably what Halo 6 would have been, but they're just deciding to call it Halo Infinite. And Forza Motorsport is just, you know, Forza Motorsport and not 8. I think Microsoft just given up with numbers. Although I would have expected them to get to 8 and then skip 9. You get it if you get it. But anyway, this was a cinematic trailer, but it was all captured in-engine. So we got to see what it would look like, I guess, if it was like a cutscene, I guess, in a racing game. You know, not many cutscenes in racing games probably, but you know. It was, they said it would run at 4K 60 frames per second, which looked great. It did really look good. Like, you could see ray tracing was great. Like, they really are using ray tracing to benefit the games a lot. Like, right out of the gate, there's Forza Motorsport and Gran Turismo 7 on the PlayStation side are really, like, showing us the power of ray tracing, and it's, you know, it looks really good. But yeah, I mean, like, most racing games do that. Like, they're really good at showing you how good the console can look with, like, really, like, high settings. And I'm not sure if it'll be able to, like, drop it down to, like, 1080p 120 frames per second, because a lot of people like 120 frames per second in racing games, apparently. But I think 4K 60 is perfect, like I've already said. So after that, we got something that is hopefully going to be very exciting. It was a game called Everwild, which is a new game made by Rare. Now, if you know Rare, they're mostly known for games on the Nintendo 64. They were bought by Microsoft when they, like, in early 2000s, and they've not done a lot since. Like, there are reasons that everyone calls any company that Microsoft buys a dead company, right? Like, Microsoft have bought tons of game studios over the years, and most of them just do nothing. And Rare is the poster child of that. Like, they've barely done anything, and anything they have done hasn't always been the best. Like, the best game that I could think of from Rare in, like, the past, I don't know, 10 years has been Rare Replay, and that's a compilation. But this game does look interesting. The visual style looks somewhat like Breath of the Wild. Well, I know we're bringing that up a lot. I think it'll probably get brought up again somewhere else, but you know. Definitely an interesting looking art style. But again, it was a cinematic trailer. And I don't think we'll see this one for a while, because an interview after the fact said that Rare still have very little game ideas for this. I feel like this is going to be a while off, like 2022, maybe late 2021 at the earliest. I think this game's a while off. But from what we saw, the cinematics looked interesting, and the visual quality definitely looked interesting. But it's probably going to be a little while away. I feel like this was just, like, shown to be like, hey guys, we're trying to do something with Rare. Don't sue us, please. Then we got another game called Tell Me Why. And I don't know if this has been announced before, but some people seem to recognize it, maybe. I don't know, but it stars a brother and sister who have constant visions of the past whenever they get, like, really emotional. It did look interesting, but I don't know if it was just me, but the lip syncing looked really odd to me. Like, it looked off. I've watched the trailer since the event, but it seems a bit strange to me. Like, when the characters speak, it doesn't look natural. Like, I've seen better lip syncing, if we can be honest, if we can just say something about it. But It looked decently interesting. Like it looked like I'm not sure what kind of style of game it will be. It will be an episodic release, and Chapter One will be releasing August 27th. So I'm presuming this is going to be on Xbox One, and then it will come to Series X later. I'm guessing that's why. I don't think the Series X is gonna shadow drop August 27th. But again, not a lot of gameplay shown, if any. I can't really remember if there was any gameplay. There might have been little bits of gameplay sprinkled in, or it could have been just purely cinematic. Then we got a announcement for an Ori and the Will of the Wisps remaster or patch, maybe, for the Series X. It's going to get full 4K HDR support at 120 frames per second. And there will be new audio features added later in the year. So I'm guessing like this will just come out later in the Series X lifespan. Maybe it's a launch title, I'm not sure, but it's good that there will be footage. It's good footage. Sorry, some distraction. But it's good to see that we will get Series X games. Like, sorry, I've completely lost train of thought here. Right. Ori and the Will of the Wisps. 4K HDR, 120 frames per second remaster. This was a good thing to like compare between the Xbox One version and the Series X version. And they did show that off in the trailer, and it's quite a decent jump. Like, Ori was already a decent looking game on the Xbox One X. Like, it did already look pretty good. But this was really the only thing we have right now to gauge the difference in power between the systems. But after that, we started getting some announcements from Obsidian. And the first one was Outer Worlds DLC called Peril Gorgon. This is coming out September 9th. It looks good, but I've not really got much to say on it because I've not played Outer Worlds yet. They did say it was the first of 2 planned DLC packs, so there's more content coming if you like the Outer Worlds. I might play it eventually, like, I probably will, because it'll probably get a PS5 Series X version, and I'll probably pick it up on one of them eventually. Then we got another game from Obsidian that had a very, like, jokey, self-aware trailer, and the game was called Grounded, and I don't know if it was just me, but I was watching this and I immediately thought of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I immediately thought of that movie, and it was just funny. Like, it wasn't a typical Obsidian-looking game, and they alluded to this heavily at the beginning of the trailer. So it's like, you're tiny people in a backyard. It's kind of like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, or that one scene in Ant-Man where he's like, training with the actual ants. It looked like that, and that's coming out July 28th, so pretty soon. And again, it's probably going to be Xbox One now, Series X later. Well, not probably, definitely, because Series X is not coming out in the next 6 days. Or 4 days. If I know the date. 4 days when this is being recorded, but And then we got a final Obsidian release, and this is the game, for me anyway. This game was called Avowed, and we did see a tiny little bit of gameplay, but not a lot. But this looks really interesting. Like, it was like a medieval style RPG, and I love that kind of game. Like, one of my favorite games of all time is Skyrim, and this looked Skyrim-like, and I'm definitely interested in seeing where this game goes. But unfortunately, it looks like it's probably pretty early stages still, so probably won't be until 2021, but when it comes out, I'll definitely pick it up. And it's probably going to be a Series X exclusive. If it is a Series X exclusive, then I'll buy a Series X for it, honestly. It looks great. Then, next game we got was a game called As Dusk Falls. And this is another one of those games, like, if you remember from the PS5 event, the game called Goodbye Volcano High. It's another one of those games that I look at it and I go, okay, it looks like an interactive drama, like, not really my kind of thing, like, lots of static images and, light gameplay. But this one didn't look like cartoony and weird and anime. Like, this one looked like it was somewhat more serious than that, and it definitely looked more interesting than Goodbye Volcano High. It didn't look as weird as that, but, it seemed to be focused on American history. it looked pretty good for an indie game, which was like it was an indie game. They did show some independent developed games, and this was one of them. It might be the only one. I can't remember, but this definitely looked somewhat interesting. I don't know if it's really for me because I'm not a big fan of that kind of game, but it did look much more like a book come to life than an anime come to life, if that makes sense. Then we got a like I don't know how to describe this one. Like they were talking about Hellblade 2, but then it was like, hey, we've got stuff about Hellblade 2. Go see it on our YouTube channel. It's like you gave up time to plug your YouTube channel. Like, well, why not just include that stuff, or why not put a link in the stream, or you know. But anyway, basically the game will be set in Iceland, and they got a bunch of like stuff about the art style and how they chose out Iceland and location setting and stuff like that. So it'll probably be pretty interesting. I've not checked it out yet, but there was nothing else showing for Hellblade 2 other than that. So if you were looking forward to more of that, like, you know, some gameplay, not going to find it here. Moving on, we got a game that, you know, has been a thing for a while, and I'm looking forward to it, called Psychonauts 2. I have the first game. I will play it eventually, I promise. But if you don't know, Psychonauts was a game on the original Xbox, and it's one of like it's like a cult classic kind of game. It's like, you know, not very many people played it back in the day, but those who did really enjoyed it, you know. And it's known for being like, you know, it's got a really unique art style. Like, it looks a lot like a Tim Burton film, like you know, the animated films like Nightmare Before Christmas and Corpse Bride and all that kind of stuff. It's like that kind of art style. The first game was apparently. The second game looks to be more like that, but in a like it looks more like a fever dream. Like if that makes any sense. Like there was bright colors everywhere and there was like kaleidoscope effects and it was really interesting looking. When I was watching the trailer, I didn't really notice it was a Psychonauts game because I haven't played the first game. I just know somewhat about it. But as soon as I saw the title, I was like, right, everything I just saw makes perfect sense. But another interesting thing about this was Jack Black voices the character, and that's always good news because, you know, Jack Black is great. But this game has been pushed back to 2021, so, I mean, that's a bit unfortunate, but, I mean, hopefully that means it'll get the polish it needs, and it'll be better when it comes out. And then we got Destiny 2 DLC announced. It'll be DLC called Beyond Light, which will be coming November 10th. I'm not sure if that will be like, if that's like around about Series X launch date, if that's before or after, but I'm guessing that must be on the day or before because this was all about it coming to Series X. It will be coming to Series X and Game Pass. It will have 4K 6 frames per second. I got really excited when I saw Xbox talk about Bungie because they're like, oh yeah, one of our oldest friends is Bungie. And I was like, yeah, Bungie did great stuff on the Xbox and the 360. What are they going to do now? And then it's like, oh, Destiny 2 again. Nothing against Destiny 2. I've yet to play it. I did play Destiny 1 and I did enjoy it quite a lot. Like, it was pretty good fun. But I've yet to play Destiny 2. I've been meaning to play it, but I've not quite got around to it yet. But I did enjoy my time with Destiny 1, but I mean, this was like, you know, the big gameplay showcase, and this marks around about the halfway point of the conference now, and so far we saw very little gameplay and a lot of DLC. Like it's either games that we knew about, like Halo Infinite or Hellblade 2, or you know, or in the Will of the Wisps, or it's like, you know, stuff that we knew would be coming, like Forza. And then it's like there was some games here that we didn't know anything about, like obviously Avowed, all the Obsidian stuff basically, except for the DLC. But, you know, it's like I wouldn't have included stuff like, you know, oh, Destiny 2, Outer Worlds DLC that'll be coming to all platforms. Like, I mean, this would have been my time to show off big exclusive games, or at least timed exclusives. Which I think is what they meant when they're coming into the second half here, because they branched all these upcoming games I'm going to talk about in a sec here, console launch exclusives. So I'm guessing these are games that are going to be timed exclusives to the Xbox Series X. But we shall see when the games and the consoles come out. But anyway, the first game they showed under this console launch exclusive banner was Stalker 2. I know nothing about the Stalker franchise. It's been a good few years since the first one. I don't know exactly when it came out. I know nothing about the franchise whatsoever. But it's good to see a sequel, apparently. Good to see a sequel. It's been a while, so apparently it's something that's been asked for, and it's good that it's coming out. It did look interesting, but again, that lack of gameplay showing its ugly face again. And it's going to be a launch title, I think, and it's lightly timed exclusivity like most of these are. Then we got a game called Darktide, which was another game that we saw very little of, all cinematic trailer. It was a futuristic first-person shooter by the looks of it, and it's coming 2021. Then after that, we got Tetris Effect Connected, which Tetris Effect is already a game on PC, I'm assuming. It supports VR, and apparently it's pretty interesting. I've never played it, but Tetris Effect Connected is like a multiplayer mode being added to that. I'm guessing that means it'll be coming Series X as well. Does that mean it's getting VR? Yes, no, maybe so. I don't know. But the trailer was just like a bunch of random people playing Xbox One or Series X, and then we got Tetris, and I had really big Tetris 99 vibes. Like I was like, oh, is Tetris 99 coming over? And it's like, no, Tetris Effect Connected, and I'm like, huh, okay. I was really confused until like I looked more into it, and I was like, right, Tetris Effect is already a game. That makes more sense. Like I was really confused when watching this. I was like, what? But then it all made sense when I actually looked into it a bit more. Then we got a game called The Gunk, which is from the developers of SteamWorld. This looks ambitious. Like it looks like a really interesting game from what we saw. Again, cinematic trailer, but it looks like a 3D platformer, which, you know, I'm always down for. It's like one of my favorite genres, so we're sorely lacking in 3D platformers, so if this is going to be a 3D platformer, I will check it out. It looks really ambitious. The art style looks great, and I'm looking to see more of this game in the future. Then we got a game called The Medium, which this was like the only game that we saw that really looks like super true next gen feeling. Like that, this is the only game where that kind of hit me. Like, you know, kind of the same way that Ratchet and Clank did in the PS5 event. Like this game it's slightly a horror game, so I mean I probably won't be that interested in a horror game, but you know, it showed two worlds being rendered simultaneously, like two of the same world but different, if that makes any sense. Like basically the same world, but there are slight differences in each world, like because the character has this power to see like all things from two perspectives, like any story like from two different perspectives, if that makes sense. Like you probably have to watch the trailer to get it, but like the character can see like both sides of a story essentially. Like there's one path that's always like, you know, makes sense and it's perfectly rational and everything. Then there's a completely like mad, off the walls kind of crazy side, and you can see both of them at once. I don't know if like the game will constantly be showing you both sides at once, because I've got a feeling that would probably be pretty awkward, but I'm guessing you can like see both at time to time, and you'll have to make choices based on which one you think is the right one you believe or something. It looked interesting, and it really did show off like the next generation feeling that we were looking for with this conference. Then after that, we got something from Sega, and that got me excited. But then it's like more DLC for a game that's already out, and it's just like, oh well, come on! Like I always get excited when Sega stuff appears, because you know it's like Sega are like that company that you want to do something and they never do it. Like they just like unless it's Sonic or Yakuza, they just don't do anything. And the last Sonic game was like what, 3 years ago was the last mainline Sonic game. Could Sega just do something? Like I mean, like how many possibilities are there for a new Sega game? Like there's hundreds, and then it's like, oh, here's DLC for Phantasy Star Online 2, which I've yet to play, but this DLC looked really interesting. I was just incredibly let down because I saw the Sega logo and was expecting something big, and then there was nothing. But you know, you shouldn't get your hopes up for Sega stuff because they've shown that with the Game Gear Micro. Check out the Game Gear Micro video for more on why that is a terrible, terrible thing. But this got me very disappointed, but the DLC looked really fun. Like, this game is something I will definitely check out at some point. I'm not sure if it's going to be Xbox platform exclusive or if it will get a PS4/PS5 release, but if not, I may end up picking it up for the Series X because this looked really fun and it looked like something I would really enjoy. But as usual, Sega just be like, here's nothing, we're doing nothing again. But you know, after that, the train of things that you're just getting extra modes continued with a game called Crossfire X, which I know nothing about. It's getting a campaign mode, so I'm guessing it's only a multiplayer game at the moment. I really don't know anything about it, but it's getting a campaign mode. It looked interesting. The visuals were pretty good looking. And that was the last game. Just kidding, not really. The last thing they announced, which, you know, when I first saw it, I was like, okay, I mean, that's a franchise. That's a game. But I was like, okay. But the more I thought about it, the more I'm being like, right, okay, you know what? I'm kind of like, kind of a little bit excited for this one. They just showed a small cinematic trailer. No gameplay, obviously. But, game Fable. The Fable franchise will be dead forever. And I've never played a Fable game before. But it looks pretty interesting. It looks great from the cinematic trailer. I'm not sure if it was in engine or if it was just something thrown together at the last 5 seconds to be like, right, guys, big franchise coming back. We are Microsoft. We're doing something with our dead franchises. God damn it! But maybe that's what they were trying to do here, or maybe that isn't what they were trying to do here. Who knows, honestly. But this is pretty great for Fable fans. Like, I know there's plenty of people who are really excited for this. But I'm not sure if it's a remaster or if it's going to be a new game, because I'm really unsure about it, because like everything else that was shown at this conference, very little was actually shown. And you may have noticed that's a running theme of this video. Not much was shown at any of these games. But we'll talk about that in the final thoughts section in just a sec. But yeah, Fable. As more comes out, I'll decide whether I want to pick it up or not. Probably will end up picking it up, to be honest. If it's Series X exclusive, then I'll get it for Series X. But as for the other stuff that was kind of like in the kind of that middle section where they were like talking about stuff that wasn't games, where the PS5 event had like them talking about features of the system and everything, the Series X has already been shown way before this event. We've already seen it. We already know all the features. So they didn't really have that opportunity. They just basically said that every game that is shown in this conference will be available on Game Pass, which is, like, yeah,